All right, in this video, we are going to go full on nerd and take a look at the numbers in terms of where these teams sit, the top 25. Now, here's what I've done. I've got the current AP top 25 for week 16, and then I have gone ahead and used CBB Analytics to get the net rating, the top net rating for the teams in their quad one games. Now, if you're not aware, quad one games are defined as teams that you play at your home that have a net rating between 1 and 30. If it's at a neutral site like the Cayman tournaments and the ones they play at Easter, if they're between 1 and 50. And then if you're on the road, if the team has a rating between 1 and 75, those are the ones that are considered quad one games. And I concede this is not perfect because the sample is small in a lot of ways. So South Carolina has played the most quad one games at 16. Other teams have generally played around 14 to 15. But I think it gives you the best picture because it's hard to compare the numbers that UConn puts up in the Big East versus the numbers that obviously a South Carolina or Texas puts up in the SEC. So it's the best way I know of sort of looking at the different teams and the different conferences and trying to compare them, although I do acknowledge it's a bit flawed because all the quad one games, there's a bit of variability in the quad one games, but I think it sort of helps filter out the garbage of the really garbage opponents these teams sometimes play. And I'm just going to jump into it. I think it'll make more sense as we get into it. So if you look at the top AP's top 25, the first team is Notre Dame, who's rated number 1 with a 22-2 record. If you look at net rating against quad one teams, UConn is actually number 1 in terms of net rating. So they are 8-3, and their net rating is 23.2. Obviously, that helps when you give South Carolina a 29-point beatdown, but they have the number 1 net rating in quad one games. Their offensive rating, and they're just a juggernaut on offense. They have the best offense. They score, per 100 possessions, they score 113 points. Efficient field goal shooting percentage is over 53%. And then you see them across the board. The other big thing that they do is they limit their turnovers on offense to 13.5. The green numbers are where they sit in percentile to the rest of Division I. So, for instance, efficient field goal shooting percentage, that is 96% versus all the other D1 teams. Their turnovers that they have or limit, that puts them at 99%. The issue with UConn, and you'll find it similar with other teams, you'll find these sort of strengths and weaknesses of all the teams. UConn's limited weakness is defense compared to some of the other teams like South Carolina, but overall, it's a good thing to have all green across. Now, the only red they have is they don't go to the free throw line very much, but on the good hand, they don't foul very much either. So their numbers look really, really good in quad one games. Number 2 is South Carolina, and they've played the most quad one games, so they're 13-3 in those games. Obviously, people are down on them for their recent loss to UConn, but again, they're plus 21.2 in quad one games. And they're good generally across the board. So offensive rating is they score 106 points per 100 possessions. The one that sort of sticks out in terms of what you would worry about for them, much like UConn, they're probably not getting to the line enough at only 26.2%. That puts them at 36th percentile. The other one is the opponent's offensive rebounding percentage. So opponents are rebounding 32% of their misses, which is high for them. Now, obviously, Texas is number 2 in the AP poll, which is the disparity. Now, number 3, UCLA is listed in the AP as number 3. And in the net rating, it would be Texas. They're 13-2 in quad one games. And across the board, they are strong. They're not quite as strong as UConn in offense, scoring 105 points per 100 possessions. But they really crush people with their rebounding. Offensive rebounding percentage is 39%. So they offensive rebound 39% of their misses. The other one that sticks out, they keep their turnovers down at 16%. And then their defense, the one that stands out to me is the turnovers they cause. So they cause the opponent possessions, 23% of their possessions end in turnover, which is one of the highest. I think that's higher than Ohio State has and some of the other pressing teams. So they're a strong, strong defensive team. Rated number 4 in the AP is USC. In the ratings, it is UCLA. They are plus 16.5. Offense is good, scoring 103 points per game per 100 possession. The one issue with them, which is a known issue, is their turnovers. I think that got exposed a bit against Ohio State and USC as well, where they're 20% of their possessions end in turnover. As well, they don't cause many turnovers as well. So their opponents, they're only 16% of their possessions of their opponents have end in turnover. Now listed at number 5 is UConn in the AP. Number 5 in the net rating is Notre Dame. They are plus 13.4. Their offense is good, 103 points per 100. Turnovers, that's interesting. With their 2-point guard lineup, their turnovers are 20.7% on offense, which puts them low at 39%. They're actually lower than UCLA, which was at 43%. They don't get to the line is very much at 24%, but better than UConn. And then going across on defense, their defense is very similar to UConn. I think it's fair to say they're a similar team, even looking at these numbers, to UConn. And it's interesting. The defense causing turnovers 19%. So yeah, I figure them and UConn, if they do match up, it'll be an interesting game and very tight. Now, number 6 is interesting. So South Carolina is rated number 6 in the AP poll, which if you look at their numbers versus the game that they played or higher, you will never guess the team that has the highest quad 1 net rating that is at number 6 on the numbers. So I very doubt that you will do it. There's one flaw in their numbers. They have only played 6 quad 1 games. They're 4-2 in those games. And that team is Oklahoma State. So there you go. Oklahoma State is plus 9.6. And just looking at their numbers, I haven't looked at what those quad 1 games are. I need to look at it. Somebody else can look at it if you want to. Their offense isn't like near elite like these other teams. So they score 91 points per 100 possessions. And their rebounding is offensive rebounding is low at 26%. But what they seem to do is play defense. Their defensive rating giving up 82 points per 100 possessions. So they got a big win over Utah the other day in Utah. So they look legit. But again, I don't know if it's a small sample from just those 6 games because they're 4-2 in those. But their defensive numbers definitely stick out, and they're holding opponents. Their effective field goal shooting percentage is 39.8%, and they don't give up offensive rebounds, limiting that to 28%. Don't cause many turnovers, around 18 to 19%, which puts them 38th percentile. But they keep teams off the line at 21%, ending in free throws. That's 93%. So unexpected Oklahoma State. I don't know if you think that's just an anomaly with the numbers, and they've had too few quad 1 games. Maybe that's why. Because I would have thought it would have been obviously USC. And funny enough, LSU's listed 7 in the AP, and number 7 is Southern Cal, who's 9-2 in their quad 1 games. And their offense is really what is lower in comparison to the other teams that are higher up. So they're scoring only 95 points per 100 possessions, and that's the issue. They're really dependent on Juju going off, it would seem, and that's why they did so well versus UCLA, because she certainly went off inefficient. Effective field goal shooting percentage, they're only shooting 44%. I figure that's when Juju's inefficient, they're inefficient, so their effective field goal is low. That one sticks out. But across the board on defense, defensive rating is 87%, or 87 points are giving out per 100 possessions, and then effective field goal shooting percentage are holding opponents to 41%. And I said at the beginning, when I was watching USC, Kennedy Smith and Juju together, that really reminds me of Jordan Pippen, just 2 long athletic forwards. And then the other numbers on that, turnovers, they don't really cause that many turnovers at 18%. They foul too much, giving up too many fouls, but they get on the line as well. Their free throw rate, that's because Juju's always on the line at 32%. and that's 86th percentile. But as well, they foul too much, putting the opponent on the line 30% of their offensive possessions, and that's 26 in the country, 26th percentile. Now, number 8 in the polls is Ohio State. In the net ratings, it is LSU. They are plus 7.1. And when you look at their numbers, it seems pretty clear they can score the basketball. Is their net rating on offense is 104 points per 100. But in these quad 1 games, their defense has not been great. They're giving up 97 points per 100 possession. That is 29th percentile. Teams are very comfortable shooting. Their effective field goal shooting percentage is 46%. But not surprisingly, the biggest difference maker for LSU is their ability to offensive rebound, which is exceptional. 41% of their misses are offensive rebounded, which puts them in the 98th percentile. I guess the overall question is their defense good enough? If you look at sort of these elite 8 teams, or the one that seem to be elite, they are the ones giving up the most points at 97 points per 100 possessions, which all the other ones like UConn and Notre Dame that are a little bit weaker on defense as well in terms of these elite teams, they're at 90. So that's the question with LSU. Now here we go, number 9 matches. So the polls have North Carolina number 9. And in net rating, North Carolina is number 9 plus 6.6. Across the board, they're good. Their offense is 97 per 100 possessions and everything. They don't offensive rebound well at 29%, which is fine. And then defense, not terrible. And defense holding opponents to 90 points per 100, potentially, and not getting a terrific amount of turnovers, but overall just solid across the board when you look at North Carolina. I guess the only question with them right now would be Utsby. I think she went out with a knee injury, and obviously that could impact things. Number 10, the polls have TCU. Surprisingly, this really surprised me. The number 10 net rating is Iowa. So they're 6-6 in quad 1 games, and they are plus 6, which is 68th percentile. They score the ball pretty well at 99 per 100 possessions, so just under a point per possession. The effective field goal shooting percentage, the one, they turn it over too much. And I saw that when they were in the Caymans. I think I forgot who was out, but their turnovers were high. That seemed to be one of the issues they have. So 22.6 of their possessions end in a turnover, which is low at 17th percentile. Their defense, net rating 93, which that's actually surprising to me. So their defense is okay. So all of those, once again, not enough turnovers probably, but overall pretty good. And they foul too much at 31%, which is 24th percentile. Now, number 11 in the polls is Duke, and listed at number 11 in terms of net rating is NC State. They are plus 5.2. Offensive numbers look good. Offensive rebounding could be slightly better. That's low at 34%. But everything else, turnovers are low. They're 88th percentile with that. Only 16 turnover percentage per game. Don't get to the line very much. And then defense, I guess that's where they sort of fall off a little bit. 95 points are giving up per 100 possession. And the other one that stands out is they don't cause many turnovers. That's 6% at 15. But offensive rebounds, okay, at 30%. But and they don't foul too much. So that's at 19%. So solid overall. I think they were listed number 8 when the rankings came out for the tournament. Number 12 is Kansas State, listed in the AP poll at 24-3. In their net ratings is Kentucky. They are 5-3 in quad 1 games, plus 5.2. Across the board, they're good. Offensive rebounding is low at 2%, so they don't even try to offensive rebound, it looks like. And free throw rate is low for them as well at 19. Everything else is across the board. So you can tell the upper echelon, it's just not quite as good defense, and the offense isn't as much. And I think it reflects well in the numbers. You can sort of see what the teams are a little bit. So with Kentucky, defense is okay at 95 points per game. So they're sort of around that level of, well, they're better than LSU. The question is, Kentucky's schedule gets harder in the second half of the SEC. I think they've got South Carolina and LSU coming up. And so these numbers could change quite drastically soon. The other one that sticks out is rebounding on the defensive end. So opponents are getting 35% of their missed shots, which puts them 13th percentile. When they played Ole Miss, it felt like they got bullied around a bit. So they better practice their rebound. I'm sure Kenny Brooks has them focused on that for LSU, because LSU might just tear them up on the boards. They don't cause many turnovers, but they don't foul too much, 26%. All right, let's see. I'm getting confused here. NC State is 13 in the polls, and net rating is Georgia Tech. They started out really hot. They've got a couple of freshmen that have done well for them. They can score the basketball with their offensive rating 100 points per possession, and overall across the board, I guess let's see what sticks out with them. I would say it would be their defensive rating, 95 points. That's mid-range, and turnovers that they cause, not so how, just seem solid across the board. Don't foul too much as well. That sort of sticks out to me, 18.9%. Ole Miss, number 14 rated Kentucky. Ole Miss is net rating at number 14. They're 5-7. They're plus 4.3. Offense, the one that stands out, their effective field goal shooting percentage is low at 43.8%. That's 34th. But what is, and as well, interestingly, their opponents shoot well as well on defense at 51%. Their net rating on defense isn't bad. They give up 93 points per 100 possessions. Everything else, they cause turnovers. That's what stands out with them. So their opponents, 25% of the possessions their opponents have end in turnovers. That puts them in the 94th percentile. I think that's one of the best ones. I think that's even better than what Ohio State does. I'll have to look at where Ohio State is. But yeah, I think Ohio State has, I think Ohio State's next. I think Ohio State's only 21%, so that's really good for them. They foul too much. The opponents are getting to the line 33% of the time. Now, next one, I've already given it away. So rated 15 is Kentucky. But by the numbers, if you're going with net rating, that would be Ohio State. That's plus 4.1. Across the board, they're all right. So in terms of offense, 98 points per 100 possession, which is 70%. That's pretty good. Offensive rebounding, they don't get many offensive rebounds on defense. Ohio State, so they give up defensive rating 94 points per 100 possession. Effective field goal shooting percentage, I assume that's so high because if a team breaks the press, then they're going to shoot fairly well, and that's 46%. And rebounds as well. I think that's, again, sort of a cause and effect for they press so hard, and if they don't get it right, then teams get the rebounds a little bit. That's at 34%. That's 14%. I think that's the same issue Tennessee has a bit. I know Caldwell gets pissed off with her team about giving up defensive rebounds. They're giving up offensive rebounds because they're defensive blocking out, but I think some of that comes with running such a high-pressure defense. And then turnovers, yeah, they're below Ole Miss, so that's interesting. So Ole Miss, 25 turnovers per game, where Ohio State is 21% of the possessions end in turnover, which is 76. And then putting people on the line, they foul, much like Ole Miss, so they're at 30%, which is 31% ranking. Next one, funny enough, we're talking about Tennessee. Tennessee is plus 3.8. It stood out to me that if you look at it, their offense is fine. They're scoring over 100, 102 per 100 possession. Field goal shooting percentage is decent at 48%. And offensive rebound, 34%. But it's really their defense. So defensive rating, giving up 98% per 100 possession, which is 25%. Effective field goal shooting is 48%. And what else do we have here? So offensive rebounds, much like, I think they're similar to Ohio State. And I blame it. I know Caldwell wants them to rebound better, and of course the coach does. But I think when you press that hard, I think that leaves you vulnerable for the other team getting the offensive rebounds. So their opponents rebound 33% of their misses, and that puts them at 28th percentile. The other one, she keeps on harping on it, is, well, they get turnovers, much like Ohio State. Their turnovers are, they cause 20, the opponents, 20% of their possessions end in turnover. And much like Ohio State and Mississippi, they foul too much at 28%. But if you're going to play aggressive defense, you're going to get that. I think that's the style of play. Let's see. The next one is 17 is West Virginia. Going by plus minus, Michigan State is plus 2.9, so they would be number 17 if you're going by this rating. Offense is good. Effective field goals, mid-range at 53. They're shooting 45%, which puts them 53 percentile. What sticks out is defense. So opponents score the ball against them at 95% per 100 possession, shooting pretty comfortably at 47%, and they're getting turnovers as well. So I guess, I haven't watched a heck of a lot of Michigan State, so it looks like they're a high-pressure team. Just looking at these, I watched one of their games, I think, against Alabama. I think Alabama won it early in the season, and they looked okay, but I haven't watched enough of them to be informed on really what they are. Much like the others, they foul too much. My God, they're putting teams at the line. 42% of the opponent's possessions end in a free throw attempt. So, yeah, that's not real good. So that would be the major area. I'm sure the coach is telling them, hey, stop fouling so much. Number 18 is Alabama. And with that, with the net rating, it would be TCU that is +1. So they can score the basketball, which doesn't surprise me. And they shoot well at 51%. Offensive rebound, I'm surprised they're not better with that, but I guess Satana Prince is a little bit stiff that way, so not good offensive rebounders. Where they make their money is just generally scoring the basketball, shooting well, running their offense. Where they get hurt is clearly their defense. They're giving up 105 points per game. Teams shoot 49% against them, and they do limit offensive rebounds. So, and that makes sense because they have Sedona Prince that will clean the glass. The other one is they don't cause turnovers, so that's 12%. But a good number is they don't foul too much, so that would be good. So I think they'll be a tough team, but it's pretty clear their weakness is defense, which is expected. And if you look at the colors, you can see it in this graph here. The top ones like UConn and South Carolina is mostly green going across. When you start getting to these teams, they don't have it all, which nobody is going to have it all, and that's where the difference is. The next one, number 19 is listed Florida State, but if you look at the number 19 is Baylor in the polls, but number 19 in net rating would be Florida State. So they're +1. They can score the basketball, so they're great on offense. So 106 points per possession, shooting 49%. And what sticks out with them is, and they don't turn over the ball. Look at that. So they only turn over the ball 13%. So I've got to look more at the point guard there because she's having a blind over season, but I just haven't watched many of the games. But that's right up there with UConn. That's why UConn's so good as well. One of the things that makes them tough is they don't turn over the ball. Florida State looks like they're the same. Defense is their problem. So 105 points per 100, and teams are shooting 50% effective field goal against them. And then as well, the other teams are getting offensive rebounds against them. 30% of their misses are being rebounded by the opposition. And the other one is they don't cause many turnovers at 15%. And then they foul a lot at 30%, putting the opponent on the line at the end of their possession. So 30% of the time, the opponent's going to offensive rebound, or the other 30% they're getting on the line, which is going to crush your defense. So they need to stop fouling. The next one is, so number 20 is Georgia Tech in the polls, and listed in the net rating is Utah. Now these ratings are prior to the Utah game versus who did they play the other night? It was Arkansas. Who was it? Sorry, I just went through them. Oklahoma State. So with that game, obviously this would be adjusted, but based on that, this is what I have right now. So offense is good. They don't offensive rebound very well. They play a very analytical game. Turnovers are too high. They need to protect the ball on offense. I said that's a big issue for them. And then defense is, it's not as bad as TCU's defense, but 96.8. points per 100 possession, and then effective field goal shooting percentage. Opponents are shooting 49% against them. They rebound okay, only giving up 28. That's better than Florida State. And then the rest of them, the turnovers, 19%, and they don't foul too much. So overall, yeah, and you can start seeing the classes of teams right here. So all these, the next one is surprising actually. So Maryland is rated 21. The next one in the ratings is Duke, and Duke's getting a lot of love. So they're 5-6 in quad one games, and they're just plus 0.5, which puts them 54 percentile. Offense, they score 98.5 per 100 possession, which is 71 percentile, and 46%. They're shooting. It's really their defense that's crushing them. Well, one thing they have improved on, I did in one of my preseason videos, Duke previous years they've had too many turnovers. Their possessions end in turnovers. It seems they've gotten that down to 17%, which puts them 87th percentile. So that's an improvement. But on defense, that's where they're getting hurt. Where people rave about their defense, but they're giving up 98 points per 100 possession. Teams are shooting 48% against them, and they're getting beat up on the board. So 35% of the misses of the opponent are getting rebounded. And then it's a double combination. They're fouling too much. So 31% of the possessions are ending with a foul. So that they need to clean that up. They need to get their defensive rebounds, and they need to, stop fouling. I guess a bit, like I haven't been watching Duke much. I can see their turnovers. They cause 21% of the turnovers, which is 75% percentile. And a lot of that is probably they do high pressure defense that makes them vulnerable to the other things, much like Tennessee and Ohio State potentially. Next one, let's see, number 22 is Michigan State, and in the net ratings, it is Maryland. So Maryland is, and these teams are the ones, this is where it switches over. Maryland is minus 0.4. Again, this was done after Sunday. They can score the basketball, so across the board, their only issue on offense is they turn over the ball too much. So their turnovers are 20.6 possessions in turnover, which puts them at 41 percentile. But otherwise, their offense is good. It's their defense that's the issue. They're giving up 105 points per 100 possessions. Teams are shooting 45% against them, and they're fouling at 28%. And rebounding, that really sticks out. Offensive rebounds is 35.1%, which is 14th percentile. So they need to block out better. I can't remember if they're down a player. I don't know if they've. It surprised me because I think it's Dulce, who's pretty athletic and can rebound pretty well, I thought. So I'm surprised they're low on that. I think they have Kubek as well. So I don't know what's going on with their defensive blocking out and limiting rebounds. The next one is number 23 in the rankings is Creighton. And then if you look at it on the net ratings, it would be Oklahoma that is minus 0.5, which puts them 51 percentile. Their offense is good. They're almost up to 100. To be this low, their offense isn't the issue because they're scoring almost 100 points per 100 possessions, so just under a point per possession. It's clear what their issue is on offense, though. It's turnovers. So they're turning over the ball. 23% of their possessions end in turnover. That's too high. That gives the other team fast breaks and everything else. So that is their major problem. And then defense, they're not holding up. So they're giving up almost a point per possession. It's 99.9, which is 20th percentile for defensive rating. And then their efficient field goal shooting percentage, like opponents are shooting 50%. That's too high. And then they're fouling too much. Well, they're not causing turnovers, and then they're fouling too much. At 28% of opponents' possessions are ending in fouls, which is 46th percentile, and that just leads to bad things. Next one, Oklahoma State is 24. Now, again, that's going to be the controversial one. Is Oklahoma, should they be higher up? And keep an eye on Oklahoma State. In the net ratings, it has Alabama. I think Alabama will slowly climb. They're currently minus 1.6. Their offensive rating, 96. The big thing is They don't offensive rebound very well. Everything across the board is okay. Their turnovers are a little bit high at 20% as well. That's too high. They need to fix up that. They don't get to the line much. Defense, net rating per 100 possession, they're giving up 98 points per 100 possession. Field goal shooting percentage, so the opponents aren't shooting great against them. They're 44%. So the problem is they're giving up offensive rebounds clearly. So that's 33% of missed shots. The opponents are offensive rebounding. That's too high. And then they're not causing many turnovers. And then they're fouling too much, a common problem. So they're 26 of the possessions are ending with fouls against the opponent to the line. Now, number 25, Illinois is listed as 25. The record's 21-5. On the net rankings, the next one is West Virginia. They have played 7 quad 1 games and are 2-4. They're minus 2.4. They are not a high-scoring team, so they're scoring 89 points per 100 possessions. That's low. That's 38%. They don't shoot it real well either at 45%. And they don't offensive rebound, and they turn over the ball too much as well at 20%. What they do well is play defense. So what they're giving up net rating is 92 points per 100 possessions. And how they do that is they get turnovers. So opponents 24% of their possessions end in turnovers, which is 93%. Of course, the cost of that is they give up offensive rebounds, which is 32%, which is 37th percentile. The other thing, consequence, they're really aggressive and cause turnovers. That's just the way they play. So that means that opponents are getting to the line. 35% of the possessions end in a free throw attempt, which is 9%, very low. Now, if anybody is still watching this video, I probably bored everybody to death. I will give you, I'm not going to run through them, God help us, but I will show you the quad 1 game stats for the SEC and just put that up. Obviously, South Carolina's won, and I'm not going to go through them, but you can put it on pause and take a look at the different stats for the teams. That's not an SEC player. That is just in quad 1 games. Then the next one, let's take a look, would be the ACC, so take a look at those. Notre Dame is number 1 at plus 14. And then for the Pac, I saw UCLA and Southern Cal, sorry. Not the Pac. Big Ten is UCLA and Southern Cal are 1-2 in the Big Ten. And then the Big 12, Oklahoma State, like I said, they are leading that. So they're plus 9.6 versus TCU. If I get a chance, I will put up what the conference ones are as well. So I'll limit it to conferences so you can see that. I'll just add that in the video. And then the final one, if you want to see it, is the Big East. And UConn, surprisingly, is plus 24. And the rest of them are in the negatives. Even Creighton's minus 4.8. So there you go. The Big East isn't that great. So what did we learn from this video? Well, I don't know if we learned anything. I just wanted to give you the numbers and let you decipher it. Now, you can crush me in the comments and say, stats are for loser, and go Bill Belichick on me. I think they pretty much reflect what we think. The only one I'm not sure about, I keep on saying, is Oklahoma State. I don't know if that's just a small sample, but everything else sort of lines up with me. You can really see the difference. The other one that stands out is, it seems like LSU with their defense is slightly off. I don't know if they have enough rim protection, if that's going to be an issue for them. But other than that, the other 6, like UConn, South Carolina, Texas, UCLA, Notre Dame, they're all fairly similar. I think it's interesting how UConn and Notre Dame seem fairly similar in how they are. The real big difference I see between them is turnovers between UConn and Notre Dame. Now, I will leave it to you in the comment section, your thoughts, your poison. Did you hate this? Did you want the data? Or have I just put everybody to sleep? Have I cured, hopefully, anybody that has insomnia? So I hope you enjoyed it. I like looking at the numbers. I think it's more telling. You can do like your power ranking videos, but I just wanted to give you the flat out numbers in the quad 1 games. Now it's over to you, your thoughts, your poison as always. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a great night.